In a book completed in 1815, the earliest practical academic work recording marine products on the Korean peninsula, Jasan Eobo, the first delicacy written by the author Jongyak Jeon, is the so-called mullet. This fish, similar to salmon, usually swims back and forth between coastal seawater and river freshwater, feeding and roaming mostly along tidal flats and shallow shores. For the people of the Korean peninsula, it holds a truly special emotional meaning. Especially in those difficult and struggling years, it was the best comfort for the empty stomachs of coastal villagers. And for inland residents, it was the cheapest option when trying to add some meat to their bones. It was even a therapeutic dish for the aristocratic Yangban class, praised as enhancing flavor, boosting qi, and harmonizing the five organs, according to the Donggui Bogum. According to Korean tradition, mullet is best enjoyed in spring when peach blossoms bloom. The swiftest fishermen, upon pulling in their nets, would hurriedly, right on their boats, cut the still lively mullet into chunks, then mix it with pickled vegetables, cold rice, and spicy sauce, making a dish of raw mullet rice, fish and meal in one. And when these fishermen returned home, the women of the household would pick out from the day's catch the smaller, less marketable fish and turn them into gold through pan-frying or grilling, creating a perfect meal to go with rice. Pan-fried mullet. But if it was truly a day of abundant catch worth celebrating, then a dish made from mullet skin, briefly blanched and finely prepared, similar to the bouncy fish skin dish from Shunda, would become the perfect appetizer with alcohol. Of course, compared to these home-style dishes, the more respectable and suitable way to cook mullet is actually to simmer it in soups and stews. Because mullet is a fish extremely rich in collagen, so the longer it simmers, the whiter and creamier the broth becomes. When the soup has been cooked down to a rich consistency, a pinch of sea salt and a little garlic turn it into a beautifully flavorful fish dish on the Korean table. And if you elevate mullet cuisine even further, then you must speak of its most prestigious form, presented as tribute to kings and royalty, mullet roe, produced through salting, drying, pressing, and drying again in a complex sequence of steps. Because it was incredibly expensive, even the wealthiest families, when eating it, would only enjoy it sparingly during drinking. The cook would be instructed to heat a small knife, cut the roe into wafer-thin slices, and eat it in tiny bites, slowly savoring every bit of flavor. But even raising mullet to a royal delicacy still isn't enough to express the Korean people's affection for it. In many coastal regions, mullet was even placed on the ritual table as an offering to gods and ancestors. For example, on Gangwa Island, famous for its mullet catch, to this day, during ancestral rites and weddings, a simple steamed mullet dish made from dried mullet remains the centerpiece of the table. Interestingly, in the eras when Jasan Eobo and Donggui Bogum were written, there were no recorded dishes involving squid. With the technology of that time, catching squid living around 200 meters underwater was far too difficult for the early inhabitants of the peninsula. So even if someone occasionally managed to catch an extremely unlucky squid, people mostly dried it in the sun, cut it into beautiful squid flowers, and used it as decoration on the banquet tables of nobles or the royal court. People mostly dried it in the sun, then cut it into beautiful squid flowers to be used as decorative items on the tables of nobles or the royal kitchen. As for the leftover scraps, the frugal people of the peninsula were unwilling to waste anything, so they mixed them with malt and let it ferment for 3 days, making what was known as squid sauce. And that was, in those times, the full extent of people's understanding of squid's flavor. But today, for fishermen who fully understand squid behavior, they only need to use its attraction to light and don't even need bait to haul in squid one after another during the night. So now, when fishermen face the once hard-to-obtain squid, they no longer treat it as a treasured delicacy. They simply slice fresh squid into thin strips, mix it with radish and spicy sauce, and eat it with rice as a simple, everyday quick meal. In the kitchen, one of the most classic squid snacks is the so-called squid sundae, squid sausage. It was invented by the people of Hamhung in North Korea, made by stuffing squid tentacles and internal organs together into the squid body, forming a sausage-like shape, and then cutting it into pieces to eat. After spreading to South Korea, another variation appeared, stuffed with radish, tofu, and vegetables, then steamed before serving. From the outside, It even looks like a special kind of gimbap. Other classic homemade methods include spicy stir-fried squid with pork and squid pancakes. But although squid is now a cheap, universally compatible ingredient that goes well with almost anything, in certain periods of the last century, it was actually an important dietary supplement that many coastal residents relied on for survival. Every year, as soon as the plum rain season in June and July ended, the fishermen quickly took out the squid they had stored and laid them all out to dry. They would lay them all out to dry, turning them into dried fish that could be stored long-term. After that, whether mixed into sauces, stewed into rich soups, or stir-fried with vegetables, nothing went to waste. But for the poorest fishermen, dried squid still had to be taken to the market, to be exchanged for money to buy rice. So on their dining tables, a unique and peculiar dish was born, using practically worthless dried radish greens paired with the unwanted squid offal, boiled together into squid offal soup. In the eyes of people back then, this dish was as humble as it gets. But because of its distinctive flavor, it has been passed down ever since. And to this day, various experts have even buffed it into a healthy, traditional farmhouse dish. Pretty amusing, isn't it? Among all the marine products of the Korean peninsula, crabs naturally rank very high. And among all these armored, sideways walking warriors, snow crab is a term that appears again and again. For example, the deep-sea red crab, with a red shell and a hard carapace, is nicknamed the red snow crab. Its taste is similar to snow crab, but because it comes from hybrid species, it doesn't sell well. This is the so-called pseudo-snow crab. Then there is the one with meat firm as sandalwood, the sandalwood snow crab, and so on. All of these examples show that the true snow crab holds an exalted position among all Korean crabs. Snow crabs in Korea are mainly caught along the East Sea coast, and in those years when transportation was underdeveloped, fishermen mostly gathered in Yeongdeok County of North Gyeongsang Province to sell their snow crabs. This tradition has continued until today. So during the peak of winter, in Yeongdeok's Gangguhang port, so in the depths of winter, inside Yeongdeok's Gangguhang port, merchants and diners line up in long queues, fiercely bidding against each other for freshly caught snow crabs. Among them, the fattest and most premium ones are often snapped up by major seafood restaurants. Crabs of this quality don't need any complicated cooking. One method is to soak the meat in ice water first, making it bloom like snowflakes, then dip it in sauces, snow crab sashimi, or simply place the whole crab in a steamer, letting the heat draw out its natural sweetness, or let customers themselves use it as the main ingredient in hot pot dishes. But aside from these pricey delicacies, snow crabs on the peninsula also have many everyday home-style preparations. For fishermen who got their hands on them first, they would toss the less attractive crab straight into the pot, making Yeongdeok's traditional dish, crab leg jerky. This is a long-lasting dried food made from cooked crab legs. There are many ways to eat it. The simplest is stuffing it in your pocket as a snack, but it's also great for cooking. Soak it briefly in water, stir-fry with sesame oil, add rice and water, and it becomes delicious crab porridge. Or, using the same method as for dried pollock, boil dried crab legs and organs together into a hangover-curing soup, said to prevent various illnesses in older people. And in households that bought snow crab, a cold dish made with green peppers, onions, and gochujang, tossed with crab meat, becomes chilled snow crab salad. A chilled snow crab salad tossed with green peppers, onions, and chili paste, or snow crab bibimbap served in the crab shell itself, using cooked crab roe, crab meat, and sesame oil, are all delicious home-style dishes with snow crab as the star. But the most remarkable of all might be Yeongdeok's spinach and snow crab dish. Local farms in Yeongdeok long ago discovered a clever trick, crushing snow crab shells and mixing them into fertilizer to boost soil nutrients. This luxury fertilizer is said to provide chitosan and other minerals to the poor local soil, so effective that spinach, normally harvested twice a year, can be harvested 3 times annually. With this natural synergy, the pairing naturally extended to the dining table. Snow crab and spinach thus became a standard combination in local cuisine. It is even said that nutrients in the crab can prevent the oxalic acid in spinach from forming kidney stones in the body, further proving that this is a match made in heaven. A perfect culinary duo. inside and out. At the end of the 16th century, under Toyotomi Hideyoshi's rule in Japan, Japan twice launched large-scale invasions of Joseon. King Seonjo of Joseon, Yeok, dispatched the great admiral Yi Sun-sin to resist. During preparations for war, Yi Sun-sin summoned craftsmen from across the nation to the camps. They forged weapons, fed the troops, and readied supplies. And during the long, grueling war, many of those craftsmen chose to settle permanently, marrying and putting down roots. Thus, in what is now the southernmost part of Gyeongsangnam-do, South Korea, a cultural city was born, gathering the culinary essence of the Korean peninsula, Tongyeong City. And beyond its diverse culinary craftsmanship, thanks to the warm Tsushima Current, Tongyeong itself became a renowned seafood city. Among all its specialties, the most famous is the Tongyeong oyster. Today, Tongyeong oysters have naturally been elevated into a premium, healthy delicacy. But just like in many other countries, their earliest role in Joseon history was simply as famine relief food. Even today, a saying still lingers: in a bad harvest year, dig for oysters. So many dishes passed down from those hard times seem messy and unrefined by modern standards. For example, oysters mixed with kimchi to make kimchi oysters. Rice and oysters steamed together in the same pot to make oyster rice. Oysters stir-fried with wild bracken for oyster bracken, and oysters simmered with bean sprouts and chili paste. To extend shelf life, fresh oysters were sometimes mixed with chili powder and vinegar to make oyster sauce. Back in those days when even basic food was scarce, this was the perfect side dish to help swallow rough, coarse grains. Yet today, in this time of abundance, that very same oyster sauce has become the ideal companion to cut the grease of rich grilled pork belly, a seafood ingredient once prized for its natural flavor and able to stand on its own without any seasoning. Back then, it ended up treated no differently than a humble eggplant or cucumber from the field, smothered in heavy sauces and strong spices. From a modern perspective, it really does feel like a bit of a waste, doesn't it? From today's point of view, it really does feel like a waste of good ingredients.